It's become an area where it used to be very male dominant. And I feel now you see in even corporations within the brands, within banking, you see a lot of women holding significant roles.
Welcome to The Fuel Line, where we explore all things automotive with a focus on mergers and acquisitions. Hi, my name's Fareed Ahmed. I'm the founder and the CEO of DSMA and your favorite podcast host. Each episode, we connect with influential figures that drive the automotive landscape. Let's shift into gear and get started. Hi, today I'm excited to introduce you to Jennifer Rafael. Jennifer Rafael, I'm proud to tell you, is one of my partners at DSMA and also the VP of the Midwest market. Jennifer, welcome to The Fuel Line. How are you?
Well, thank you, Fareed, for having me. I'm fantastic.
Jennifer, you've had such an extraordinary career in the automotive industry, covering various areas of the automotive industry. Maybe you could tell the audience a little bit about who Jennifer Rafael is.
So, it all started, I guess, quite some time ago. But I started in the automotive industry through captive finance. Okay. And I had the opportunity to spend some time with different brands. And then from there, I went into the financial institution of banking and spent some time there as well. Always kind of, working around, residual financing, also with the captive financing aspect of it. Subvented rates. So it's a little bit about the indirect lending and also the commercial lending side of the business. At the bank, I spent a very good time in launching a new bank into different markets.
Yeah, I remember that.
So it really created a different aspect and also, on the more North America platform, both in Canada and the US. So really, had me, explore the different parts of the Canadian market and the US market, but all within the acquisition lending component and commercial lending. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background.
How long have you been in the Chicago Midwest market, Jennifer?
So we've been there for actively in one of our biggest markets that we've done very, very well in. Been there for 4 and a bit years, almost 5 years coming up.
How time flies, hey, Jennifer?
It does.
It's incredible.
Some really exciting times and, great group of dealers, very welcoming, market within the U.S.
Great.
And we've had a great opportunity to do a lot of transactions there. And I feel that it's kind of been our stomping ground, to be quite honest.
Now, a myth. Is there really a big difference between the operations of Canadian car dealers and US dealers? Or are they pretty similar in the way they operate and think?
There is difference within the culture, I believe, of the different countries. But ultimately, automotive professionals are automotive professionals. I think everybody really does operate their business quite, to their market. Different markets maybe draws in different, customer base and maybe, a little bit of a different culture. But at the end of the day, I think car dealers are out there to make money, look for a great opportunity, service their customers really well, and, grow within their footprints.
Wow. So, being a woman in the automotive industry, that's another very common subject matter in our industry. Tell me about what your experience has been, or if somebody a lady was watching us on today, what advice would you give them about getting into the automotive industry?
I think the automotive industry, and I may be a little bit biased, but I think the automotive industry is always super exciting. Yeah. It's always been a pleasure working within this industry. So, I'm a big promoter of it. And I feel that, the women within this industry have really, it's become an area where it used to be very male dominant. And I feel now you see in even corporations within the brands, within banking, you see a lot of women holding significant roles. And, these roles are significant enough to make a difference. And I think the culture has changed a little bit from when I started to now. And I may be aging myself a little bit, but, it has definitely developed. It's very diversified now. I go to conferences where a lot of the times I probably was the only woman in the room. And now, we have a lot of representation, which is nice to see. And personally, I think women enjoy it. We enjoy the challenge. We enjoy the interaction, and it's been a lot of fun.
It's a great business. I know that you spend a lot of time working with organizations like NAMAD and helping minorities in the automotive industry. What other services does DSMA offer to help minorities or anybody looking to buy a store that maybe it's their first dealership?
Yeah, I'm glad that you say that, because there's, obviously we're a great association to NAMAD, which has really helped me work with a lot of the manufacturers within that space. And I think it's become very obvious that there's a need for guidance. There's a need for assistance. And, especially within the first time buyers, it's kind of hard to do a transaction. And there's a lot of, things that you may not know, and you may know, and you may think you know. So you really want to set yourself up for success. And it's really important to have all the details and understand how a transaction actually comes together, and really setting yourself up with that pre-qualification package.
And how do you present that individual to the manufacturer? You're talking about pre-qualification package. Maybe you could just give us a few minutes on that.
Yeah. And so what we have done for several years now, and I think now we've perfected it as an organization, is, we have a pre-qualification, and we undertake, a lot of first-time buyers. And we're really taking a look at what their capacity is, what's going to make them happy, and really lining them up with the right opportunities.
Correct.
And I think that's been very essential within their success.
So, Jennifer, let's talk a little bit about financing. You're an expert for our company when it comes to the financing structure. 2023, 2022 were very unique years because of COVID. But I noticed in 2024, the attitude changed a little bit with lenders. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, how the lenders are looking at our industry today, maybe.
I think our industry in general has been a bit challenging, right? So, if you look back, I can't wait to stop talking about COVID, but, it's the reality of what we're looking at. And in the financial landscape of what the banks, kind of tend to look at trends and analysis, you're still looking at 4 to 5 to 6 years of data. And a lot's happened within that time period. You have what we normally call, post-COVID, and then, pre-COVID results. And it's not to be negative in any form of the imagination, but it does create, some questions about where do we, look ahead, and what does that future look like? And a lot of times, bankers are very conservative, and that's just normal. I don't think that's ever changed.
Sure.
But it does allow us to kind of look at, I always take a consideration to post, present, and future values. And I think the banks look at that as well. And, we do a really good job when we do our valuations, because we're looking at sensitivity analysis. And, typically the financial institutions, they do the same sort of format. It's important for our buyers to know that we recognize that, because those are the challenges that they're facing within their, financial structures and those financial relationships that they have.
Sure.
But if you do it right, I think the opportunities are still as good as they were post-COVID, pre-COVID. Anything that you want to look at, it's just making the appropriate adjustments to the credit structures to make sense. And a lot of it's based on cash flow.
Got it. So you get asked, I know you deal with all of our largest clients in our company. You get asked a lot, is this a good time to buy, or is this a good time to sell? What would you comment on that, Jennifer?
It's a funny question, because I get asked that all the time. And, I think it's all based on opportunity. And it's never just a good time to buy or a good time to sell. I think it's very much specific to the opportunity itself. And when the opportunity presents itself, what does it mean for that dealer or that dealer group? And, how does it incorporate within their bigger picture of their growth strategy? And it's really based on numbers. It all boils down to numbers, and all boils down to, what does that opportunity yield for them in the future? And where are they looking to grow? So, especially sellers, they're always asking me, is this a good time to sell? And I tell them, I think the stores are always for sale based on opportunity and what does it mean for them. So, we look at the transactions really based on both sides. It has to benefit the seller and it has to benefit the buyer. And, is it a timing thing? Not necessarily. I think it's just based on opportunity and where people really want to see themselves.
Now, last year, it was quite noticeable that the large dealer groups didn't really step in and make major acquisitions like traditional. Where do you see them heading in 2025? And if I could add to that, do you feel that the impact of the interest rates is going to affect their decision in 2025?
Well, cost of borrowing is always a factor in anything that they're looking at, especially when they're looking at a growth strategy. I think we had several years of, a lot of growth. Dealer groups consolidated a lot, and there was a lot of movement within the market. Did it slow down? I think it slowed down a tad, but I don't think that the groups that were still looking to grow, I think the opportunity that they had was to maybe take a step back a little bit, take a look at what growth they had acquired. And I believe that a lot of them just had to get settled because they took such a runway at a lot of different opportunities, and not only within their markets, but outside their markets, which sometimes can make it challenging. But I feel that, the growth in 2025 is really going to take a spike. I believe a lot of people are positioned right now to grow. And they've kind of got their head around, the differences within the market and more on the consumer side. And not only that, but maybe a lot of them have also seen a lot of changes within their manufacturers.
So here's the magic question. Do you think prices have leveled out now? Or do you feel all these spikes in overpriced dealerships, underpriced dealerships? Do you see it leveling, or do you see 2025 seeing a slow increase in valuation?
So definitely see an increase in valuations. I think a lot of people have realized that, 2023 was a reality check a little bit. Interest rates went up. There was a lot of things going on with EV, non-EV. What does that implementation look like? With the cost of borrowing going up, everybody kind of took a step back and made some adjustments to their business models. Because one thing I could say is dealers are very resilient.
Sure.
And they'll figure out how to make things work within the economy and the markets of, that they play in. Where do I see 2025 with evaluations? Clearly is a big topic of discussion. I think a lot of people just want to kind of go back to that, what they call normality. But it's not so much just, going back in time. It's more about where did I learn from these previous years? Where are opportunities to excel? And what does my business model look like for the future? Making those, different adjustments to their business model will certainly make a big difference. But, there's a lot, we look at a lot of evaluations in 2024. Dealers have done better than they did, let's say, if we were to look at 2019 and 2018. So there has been an increase in the business. It's just because they came off of such a high, that they think they've actually taken some steps back. But in reality, they've actually taken some steps forward.
Here's a question for you. I got asked a question from one of the people in our audience, and they asked, how do you define dry powder? What is dry powder in terms of the automotive industry?
Well, I don't know. Dry powder. Let me think about what that means. There's a lot of, I usually call it upside opportunity. And there's always opportunity to do better. And I think, we still have an aging, dealer body. There's still a lot of changes within the manufacturers and where they're headed for the future. A lot of manufacturers are challenged with, different product advances and where they want to take, their product lines. And I think the dealers, the one thing I've seen over the years is they're a lot more spoken. They're making their voices a lot louder, and they're looking for the opportunity where they're focused on, let's build a brighter future and let's do it together. And I feel that, the dealers are really focused on where's our upside opportunity and how can we make not only this brand, this brand, more advantageous to our consumers, and what changes do we need to make?
For all the lenders that are watching this podcast today, if you could give them any advice for 2025 in lending in our industry, what advice would you give them today?
Well, I think our lenders are very, they understand the markets. One thing I would say to most of the lenders is, don't be afraid, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times they hear one thing in the news and they react very quickly. And, I see that a lot, and I've lived it actually for many, many years. But I do believe that, all dealers want to be successful, and they really want to create the right structures so that they can expand within their markets, outside of their markets, and and giving their people opportunity. And I think they really care about the consumer. So I would say, listen to those dealers. They're not, they're there to make their business more profitable.
Right. If you were to buy a dealership today and you think it's a good value, it's got a lot of upside for the future, Jennifer, what brand would you buy?
I'm not so focused on brand.
Okay.
I'm more focused on market and demographics. And I think that, a lot of people hang their hat on, a specific brand, which I believe that's important as well. The brand vision is very important.
Right.
A lot of the dealers partner up with particular brands because they have, a clear path and direction of where they're taking their dealer body. But I also think that location is prime. And, just like buying a house, right? Focused on location. And I think a lot of the dealer groups do a very good job at doing that. I think they focus on different demographics, different areas, and they're really looking at more or less like a distribution model for themselves. And they're, you'd be surprised, some dealer groups that are in Florida are moving into the Midwest. So,
wow.
If you think about the dynamics of it, It makes a lot of sense. And I think that's the way to go.
So, Jennifer, I know lots of organizations reach out to you for advice and guidance. If you spoke to those major groups that you speak to that are all across the United States, what advice would you give them for 2025 in regards to their acquisition strategy for 2025?
It's been a very interesting couple of years for dealer groups, I think. They've gone through, a big point in time where they were expanding pretty rapidly. I think now everybody's taken, a step back and try to look at within their business model, what's our next opportunity? What's going to make us greater? And a lot of dealer groups, they'll call me and they'll ask me for advice, and they look at a lot of deals. But, the unfortunate part is they pass on a lot of deals as well. So I think, their big vision now is to be more strategic. They want to grow with a plan in place. So we have really some close relationships with a lot of the buying dealers, I guess you want to call them. And these buying groups are coming to us with, here's my business model.
Right.
This is what we're looking for. We set some parameters in place, and we help them structure what their next opportunity may look like within the different markets.
Could you expand a little bit about how you do that? Because I know you have a strategy for that. Maybe explain a little bit, if you can, what your strategy is when they come to you and say, okay, Jennifer, because I remember last week you had that very call, and I remember how you structure that. How would you recommend they first start in their planning, maybe?
So it's very important to have a growth strategy. And I think a lot of the times it's essential for them to plan ahead. And by saying that is not every opportunity doesn't come, to be right away. So a lot of the dealer groups are based on concentration. They want to have a concentration of dealers within a certain market span. So we typically take a look at where all of their dealerships are located, where they want to expand, what kind of demographic area, what does that geographic, look like
Market
for them?
Size, I'm assuming.
People are very important. So what kind of bench do they have? How do they want to grow? And what speed do they want to grow? Are they still trying to grow 5 rooftops a year? Is it 1? Is it 2? What does that look like for them? So we kind of build out a strategy with them.
Oh, wow.
So it's really a collaborated approach, and it helps them kind of get a little bit organized, not only on their growth strategy, but also on their financial metrics. What can they do? How can they expand more intelligently, I guess, if you want to call it, with more of a growth strategy in place, but that will allow them to grow into the right markets with the right brands, also creating the right amount of cash flow to continue to grow.
So talking to sellers right now, if a seller or somebody that was contemplating selling their dealership in the next couple of years, and if they're wondering if these groups are capitalized well enough to make more acquisitions, what do you see as the capitalization of these groups? Are you feeling pretty excited that they've got a great war chest? Are they stretched? Talk a little bit about that, the capacity to complete a deal.
So, most of the groups are pretty capable and they don't, they're not out in the market looking for opportunities just for practice. They're out there looking for the opportunities that make sense for their growth strategy. Very strategic, I think more than ever. And it's come to the point where I think people have become their biggest area of focus as well. They've all done a really good job in grooming their people, what I call a bench of people that they can expand with. But I believe there's still a little bit of a gap within their growth strategy and having the right people to implement into their growth strategy. So on a seller side, it's critically important to have, your employees that are, veteran employees, people that understand your business model as well, and employees that have been empowered to kind of run that store. I think a lot of the dealer groups are looking for those type of individuals so that they can grow within their own dealer group.
So another way of putting it is, if you are a well-situated, well-located dealership and you have a very competent staff, you are actually a very good target for acquisition. Would that
Absolutely.
be a fair comment?
Yes.
Okay.
And even within our evaluation, we take a look at metrics. We look at all the KPIs, right? We obviously look at the P&L and we do our normalization, but we also include a component of people. Who are your people? How long have they been there? And maybe who are the top 5 influential, people within your organization that can to help the buyer transition into that asset.
Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time for the audience and myself to get to know you a bit better and your journey in your career.
Well, thank you, Fareed, for having me. This was a lot of fun.
And thank you for taking the time. Please remember to share, like, and subscribe. My name's Fareed Ahmad. Hope to see you again soon on The Fuel Line.